about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, so today I want to talk about the case of Corey James Edkins. He is a 2-year-old white male child that is considered endangered and missing. Now, I'm pretty familiar with this case as it has happened close to me within, I would say, 30, 40 minutes from my location. I've had a lot of requests to look at this, and to my surprise, when I went back through my files today looking for some stuff, I found that I did kind of look at this case real early on in my cold case career. It was back in 2012. I was requested to look at it for an organization that dealt with missing children. And I did a little bit of an assessment, and it was kind of neat to read over that and see, hey, do I still believe with that assessment now, 11 years later? And to be honest, it looked like it was fairly simple, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that in a little bit then, and it certainly seems pretty simple now. Now, you don't get the wrong impression on that. Just because I mean something simple, remember, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. People have a different definition of what solve really is. Some people think that solving a case is making an arrest. Well, what if that person's innocent? You didn't solve the case. Some people think that solving the case is actually getting a conviction in front of the jury. Hey, we've all seen juries make a mistake. Think of Casey Anthony. And she's guilty. OJ, he's guilty of sin. But they're free people today, right? Some people think a case being solved is being sentenced and convicted. And we just certainly know that that is not true. Now, some people like to say that it's all three of those things tied up in a neat little bow, and yes, that is nice to have. But to me, solving a case is not necessarily having an arrest. I solved the Don Miller case, and there is not an arrest yet in that, yet. I emphasize yet. So, and there's a lot of cold cases and investigators who they're the lead investigator in cold cases, and they know who did it. They may even know what happened, but they just can't prove it. And that is the way our jury system and judicial system is set up, that, hey, you have to go through many steps. You have to have probable cause in order to make an arrest. Once you make an arrest, it has to go to court. You have to be judged by a jury of your peers, or if you waive that, a judge. There's steps in place in order for innocent people not to be convicted and go to jail for something they didn't do. It fails, but that's what we have in place. So remember, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So when I look at this case, again, remember, I like to correlate cases, meaning whenever I start researching a case and I start annotating things, I oftentimes will be like, ooh, this reminds me of this. Well, what happened in that? Who was held responsible in that? How did it occur? And that way you can take those experiences and that knowledge from that similar case and apply it to the current case. So when I'm looking at this case, I certainly get vibes from the Jolene Witt case and also JonBenet Ramsey case. Now, all three of those cases involve children of varying ages. Corey was 2 years old. I'm not sure JonBenet, how old she was, 7 maybe, I want to say. And Jolene Witt, I believe, was 10. So varying ages, but a lot of similarities in between them. So let's start out with what we know in the Corey Atkins case. Okay, again, Corey was 2 years old. He lived at the time at 159 2nd Street in New Columbia, Pennsylvania. And when you look at the first things that I like to do is when I get an address of where somebody went missing is to pull up a map, especially a satellite map, and then I'd like to go into the street view if I cannot go there physically. I planned on going to New Columbia and looking at this area physically, but because of some issues, I was not able to do that. But hey, the internet, it's a great place for such things. Not so great for people being able to express their opinion in comments, but that's a whole nother story. For purposes of this, looking at that overhead map, one thing struck me fairly quickly, and that is the river being right there. Okay, so that's just something that I saw right away. Corey went missing on October 12th, going into the early morning hours of October 13th, 1986. For your victimology, what are you looking for? Well, for a child, it's very difficult because they haven't established their personalities yet, meaning they can't choose to be a high-risk or low-risk victim, meaning a high-risk victim being a prostitute or a drug user, those types of things that make them high risk. Now, it doesn't mean Corey isn't a high-risk victim, because a child can be a high-risk victim at no fault of their own, meaning they could be in a very volatile household. They could be in a drug-induced household. So the victimology here on Corey has to expand outward towards family members, the house. Okay, think of the Jolene Witt case and how Jolene Witt was, to me, a medium to high risk victim because there was no supervision. Although the parents were there, they let the kids do what they want. And in addition to that, they had a lot of strangers into the house. Maybe not strangers is a bad word. They just had a lot of people in and out of that house. Think of Jolene Lakey in that case and how there was a lot of different men that were released from jail into that house. That makes the child a high-risk victim for something. More than likely, it is usually, if it is a female, it's usually sex-related. I mean, that's just statistics. That's not me just speaking off the cuff. So, but here, we don't have a female victim. We have a male baby, a child, 2 years old. Okay, so you think of conflict. When you think of victims, what could happen? When you think of JonBenet Ramsey, and you think, okay, what could happen? And you think of her dance recitals and the way she is being portrayed to be older than what she is. Now, some people will frown upon that, and I understand, but it's also what makes the child happy. If I think of my own daughter and daughters that are watching this and think of gymnastics. There are people out there that say, hey, gymnastics sexualizes the child and you're an evil parent for allowing them to be in gymnastics. That's just ludicrous. Okay, the child likes it, the child does it, and you support it as a parent. John Benet Ramsey, yeah, maybe Patsy Ramsey pushed her into that, but if the child liked it and enjoyed it, the beauty pageants was something that they did together. It was a mom and bonding experience. Now, I don't want to get off on John Benet Ramsey case. I did a video on that. It must have been well received because it has well over 1 million views on it. But my thoughts on that are separate, although it does correlate a little bit to this. So what could Corey have done? Those John Benet, Jolene Lakey, they didn't bring anything upon themselves. It was more than likely a male that had sexual purposes in those cases, okay? That doesn't correlate to this. This is something different. What could a 2-year-old child do in order to be a victim? Remember, when I look at cases, I like to make it as simple as possible, to not go down rabbit holes. You stick to the facts, what makes sense, okay? Greed, sex, revenge, okay? What can we apply here in this? Well, I'll let you know, we're not there yet. We're at October 12th, 13th, 1986, 2nd Street, New Columbia, and we are at 12 o'clock at night, okay? We're at midnight. Inside this house, you have a bevy of people, okay? You have 2 adults right now. You have a female named Alberta, and you have Corey Edkin's mom, Debbie. Okay? Alberta, Debbie. They're the 2 adults. Alberta's 24. I'm not sure of Debbie's age at this time, but I'm going to guess that they were similar in age. Now, let's look at the children. There are a total of 4 children in this house. 2 that are Alberta's and 2 that are Debbie's, including Corey. Corey is sleeping in Debbie's bed, according to everybody that's involved in this, meaning the 2 adults. At midnight, Debbie decides that she is going to go get pizza and get gas for her car. Now, right off the bat, you probably want to cast shade at that, meaning you're saying, oh, that's a red flag right away. But I would say slow down, okay? Just because something seems off to you and me, because we wouldn't do that, okay? I wouldn't do that. I'm not going anywhere to get pizza for anybody at midnight, okay? That's me. So yeah, it'd be easy for me to cast judgment right there. But you have to look into Debbie's background. Is that normal for her? Okay? And if you talk to her family members and they say, yeah, I mean, she was a night owl, whatever it was. So right off the bat, I can't say that that is any indication to me whatsoever. You have to look at this as a non-biased observer. Debbie goes. Police checked surveillance videos and determined that she is not lying. She went there and she got pizza. Stroke of luck, I say, that Unimart had surveillance cameras in 1986. Or did Debbie know that? That we will determine. And again, hey, I'm not using last names in this. Okay? I don't believe in outing suspects. I leave that to the police department. I could give last names in this because it's out there. You know, it's in news, but I prefer not to do that. There's no need for it. So I just use first names. Debbie returns from her pizza and her gas getting at 12:30. Now, the reason she drove I don't know, 15 miles away maybe, and to come back a total of 30 minutes is, there's nothing open except for that place, I guess, in that area. Now, although I live close to that area, I'm not familiar with it. She comes back at 12:30. Alberta says, I don't want pizza, which now, again, that's a little bit of a red flag. You know that she was going for pizza, and then she comes back, but now you don't want any. So she just bought pizza for herself? Well, it's possible. What is it? Is it just a slice, 2 slices? It's a full pizza. I don't know that. So I can't make any determination off of that. But what she says she does do next is she asks Alberta, hey, did you check on the children? She says no. Debbie goes up the steps, which you can see here. Checks on the child. Child is missing. This is around 12:40. They check the house. They call police at 1:10, according to my timeline. Now, that is a red flag for me. And that is something I do not need to look back at victimology or find out what her proclivities are. That is a red flag. At 12:40, you check at, at this time of night. And let me back up because I missed a step. When Debbie comes home from getting the pizza and the gas, she tells police she sees the front door ajar. Okay? She finds it odd. Well, certainly. It's October. It's cold. I would find that odd as well. Now you go up and you check your child. Your child's not there. And this is at 12:40. And you don't call the police until 1:10. That is a 30-minute time gap. Your house is not that big. My house is not that big. In a frantic state, looking for a child at that time of night inside a house, I believe the police should have been called a lot sooner. But hey, I'm not going to cast judgment yet. She calls police at 1:10. Chaos ensues. Okay. Police bring in divers. They bring in bloodhounds. This is a big case. Of course it is. They're looking for a 2-year-old child. No sign, no nothing. Alberta sticks to her story. Hey, I see nobody come in. I didn't hear anybody go out. I was here the whole time. I believe, and this is something else I would need to know, is that she was watching TV in the living room. And the door that was ajar is right next to that. So she says she sees nothing. She sticks to that story. She takes a polygraph. She passes the polygraph. Debbie tells the same story. Okay, that's it. That's all we know. It's that simple. We fast forward this case until just a couple months ago. Remember, this happened in 1986. And a couple months ago, there was an arrest in this case. Not for the murder or abduction and kidnapping of Corey, but for obstruction of justice. Now, let me explain to you how this occurs. They hold 2 grand juries. I believe they held one in 1989. A grand jury is held to compel people to testify. It's usually when you have run into a dead end, you do not want the case to dissipate or go cold, so you convene a grand jury. I've been in grand juries. I've read statements to grand jurors. I've testified in grand juries, and I've read thousands of transcripts of grand jury testimony in 3 different cases. I had to go into the president judge swear not to say anything, not to divulge information in order to read such grand jury stuff. Jolene Witt case, I did that. And that's how I know there was an indictment. But in this case, there was an indictment. And it was for the jury came back and said, hey, an individual is lying. Now, is it Alberta or is it the mom? Because they were the only two adults in the house. Neither. It is for a guy named, and I know the last name, but I just want to focus on the first name, Henry. Henry is indicted. Basically for, it's not perjury, but he lied to the grand jury. Now, what did he lie about? Old Henry boy was I believe, 18-year-old kid at this time. Debbie, I want to say, is around 24, 26 years old. Henry boy likes to hang out there. He likes to do errands for Debbie. He washes her car, waxes her car. He cut the grass. He spent the night there just a couple days previous. He testifies to all of this in interviews. Well, he gets to a grand jury, and the first thing he does is he tries to separate himself from Debbie and Alberta, meaning, I don't really know them, okay? Yet, it was determined that Henry boy was there the night that Corey went missing. Remember, on the 12th going into the 13th. So he was there on the 12th, around 10:30, something in that area. And I'll get to the grand jury's findings and I'll read from it in order to clarify anything that I might have messed up on. Now, I know that two things. The passage of time from when this happened, 1986, he testifies in 1989 at a grand jury, but then he testifies again at another grand jury, and I'm not sure what year that was. But listen, people like to say, if you tell the truth, your story never changes. Yes, that is true. But I do know through the passage of time that a person's recollection of things dissipates by no fault of their own. It's time. Time's an undefeated opponent, okay? It works on our brains. So when somebody messes up on a specific detail, such as, let's say in 1986, he said the shirt that he wore that night was a red shirt. He should know that in 1986, in October 13th, 14th, 15th, when he would have been interviewed, if he was interviewed then, because it's the closest to the time. But if you ask him that same question today, and he says, I don't recall, you can't jump on him right then and say, well, now you are lying. Because you said back, hey, listen, I just don't remember. It wasn't important to me, okay? The color of my shirt wasn't important to me. Whatever I said back then is what you should probably go with. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're interviewed, if Henry Boy's interviewed on October 13th, 1986, and they say, where were you last night? And he says, I was at home. I was at home asleep. Okay. Fast forward to today, and we ask Henry Boy, hey, where were you on the night Corey went missing? And he says, I don't recall. Okay, trooper, now jump on him. Now you can, because why? Because you're not asking for a small detail to be remembered 40 years later. You're asking for something like a significant event that happened in your life that you should remember. It's not a detail. Were you there like you said you were? Or were you not that you're saying now? That is significant. So Henry Boy has some issues. And his issues are that he's distancing himself from not only Debbie, but that whole area. So what I want to do is, I have the grand jury indictment here. And I circled a couple things that as I read through it, I was like, ooh, I don't like this. In 1986, Henry Boy is interviewed. And he said that, and again, this is close. Well, I just see here that Debbie is 24. So Alberta and Debbie are both 24. I said 24, 26. So, and Henry Boy was 18. This is as close to the crime as we're going to get for statements. Okay. Henry says that on October 13th, so the actual October 12th, then it hits midnight, and then it goes to October 13th. On October 13th, he traveled to West Milton, which is in very close proximity. Maybe 7-10 miles of New Columbia, around 2 a.m. to check on his grandmother because her medical alarm was activated. And then he returned home, which his home was his mother's house. Now, why do I have that circled? Because it's an event that puts him in proximity of that house. And it just happened to be during the time frame that Corey went missing. You know what I mean? So whether he's using that as an alibi or he just is saying that because he was in the area and afraid he was spotted, or whatever reason it was, it's a red flag to me. So we'll keep flipping through this. And the next thing is probably the most important part of this case. I have two different witnesses that apparently back this up. It says here in the affidavit for the grand jury, in the late afternoon of October 14th, it was discovered that a fire was smoldering in the burn barrel located in the backyard of Debbie's residence, where Corey went missing. Torn children's shorts, a child's pajama bottoms with cuts in the legs, and Scotch tape stuck to the legs in various places, along with a jersey, were all found to be partially burned. When Henry Boy was shown the jersey from the burn barrel, he acknowledged that it was his shirt. He stated that he got grease on it while working on Debbie's car. He stated he then gave it to Debbie as a rag. Now, how I got this case again recently was a concerned citizen asked me to look at it, and they sent me some stuff, and they did some investigation of their own. And they actually talked to two witnesses, both neighbors of Debbie, on that night in October of 1986. One to the rear, I think, and one to one of the sides. And they said, hey, one of them said on October 12th, around 9 or 10, they saw Debbie burning something in that barrel. And another person said the same thing. Okay, they saw this the day prior, or not the whole day, but a couple hours prior to Corey being reported missing. Now, in this, and I tend to believe this more just because it is a grand jury obvious document, that on October 14th, this was done. Regardless of which one you believe, to me, it's like people like to jump to, hey, it's not true, because one person said it happened at 10 o'clock at night on the 12th. The grand jury says it was on October 14th. Somebody else said it was October 13th. So we have to not believe the testimony. That always makes me laugh, because it's the same thing if a robbery occurs and the clerk is getting robbed. Okay, she has nothing in this. Two people come in, masks on, put a gun to her face, give me the money. She gives the money. There's a witness over there who's buying groceries. They leave. Police interview him that night. Clerk says, I'm so scared. I didn't know what to do. Well, he had a gun to my head. He stuck it right in my face. And the police says, well, can you describe the gun? Yes, it was black, and that's all I know. They interview the witness, and witness says, oh man, I can't believe it. I was just trying to buy myself a Mountain Dew, and these two goons come in, one stuck a gun right in that girl's face. I saw the whole thing. Well, can you describe the gun, sir? I sure can. It was brown, had a silver tint, had a black handle. So here you have two witnesses that are non-biased. They have nothing to do with this robbery. They're not suspects in the robbery. Yet they describe two separate guns being used. Now, are they lying? Do you have to disregard their testimony and their statement because of a detail that was wrong? No. There was a gun involved, right? There's no questioning of that. So you can't just say, oh, we can't believe them. No, that's ridiculous, okay? So what the witnesses say about the burning, I believe. Just because the times are off, there's details that are off, it happened. Now, because it happened, it has to trigger a red flag. Okay? It has to. Number one, who is burning something at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night? Now, if you want to discard that witness and say it happened on October 14th, I would say to you, you have a missing child. It's been missing for a full day now. But yet you're going to go out and burn something in a barrel? Does that make sense? Correlate that to 100 years earlier, the Lizzie Borden case. Lizzie just happens, a day or if it was a couple hours after her stepmom and dad were found killed with an axe, she just happens to burn her dress. Come on. You know what I mean? You have to simplify it. There's reasonings for that. Now, the burning of this stuff. Number one, a child's clothing. That is very troublesome to me if it is related. And I'm not sure if it is. But it says there were cuts in the legs in the Scotch tape. The Scotch tape, I don't know what that means. You know, were they so poor that the pajama bottoms had rips in them and they were taped with Scotch tape? I would think not. A 2-year-old playing with tape, putting it on his pajama bottoms, potentially that's possible. But cuts in the legs, I don't know what that means, but it's troublesome. The jersey is even more troublesome to me. Henry Boy says it's his, but he got grease on it. Okay. We're going to come back to this burn barrel. In her appearance before the grand jury, Debbie did not mention Henry staying overnight at her home, washing or waxing her car, or attending the birthday party that they had previous in that day for another one of the children. And she also did not identify him as being present in the home in the hours leading up to Corey's disappearance. So this is a huge red flag, and I know police see it. They obviously see it. Why did nobody mention that Henry Boy was at that house a couple hours before Corey's disappearance? When the police come to you and they say, hey, child's missing, sit down, we need to talk. If you miss that Henry was there because they talked to you and you're going frantic, I understand that. However, once you regain your bearings, meaning a couple hours later to the next day, I guarantee police asked her again, okay, calm down. Now that everybody's calm, I need you to think real hard. We need to know. And I know they asked this question. I know they did. And I know I'm assuming. But it's investigation 101. I know they did. I'm not even going to question that they didn't ask this question. Who was here in your house today? Tell us, everybody. And at that moment, if not only Debbie, but also Alberta failed to mention that Henry Boy was there, and they named other people. This guy was at the birthday party. This guy was there. And if they both failed to mention him, there's a reason for that. Right? Well, how can you fail to mention him? We'll come back to that. Now, when police talked to Debbie and they asked her to describe who Henry is, she says, and these are in quotes, he's like a son. I mean, I haven't seen him since 1987. I circled that because sometimes you want to, again, distance yourself. I want to say from the problem, but it's not from the incident. Okay? Meaning, think back to the Jolene Witt case. And remember Steve and Alan? Okay? They were down there that night, and now they're not seen together ever again. Why? Right? You have to ask yourself that. So now, in November of 2020, Henry Boy is interviewed. And he kept saying he could not recall if he was present at the residence on the day when Corey disappeared, or if he attended the birthday party. Again, that's not a detail that he should waver on. If you were there earlier, like you say you were, in 1986, well, then you were there. You don't say you don't recall. You do recall. So why are you distancing yourself? All right, I have a big circle around this entire paragraph that I'll read here because I have annotated here. This is totally different from his 1989 grand jury testimony. Again, this is in 2020. When asked when he had last had contact with Debbie or Alberta, he stated that it was a week or two before Corey's disappearance because he cut the grass, which he noted was a one-time deal. He then pointed out that police found his shirt in the burn barrel. He stated that while he was cutting the grass, he ran out of gas. Then, when he filled up the lawnmower, it overflowed. So, because it was an old shirt, he just took it off and wiped the tank and the lawnmower off so that it would not catch fire. He stated that was the only reason why he placed the shirt in the burn barrel rather than the regular trash. He stated that he did not remember what shirt he had been wearing. Now that is totally different from what he had said in 1989 grand jury testimony when he said that he was working on Debbie's car and got grease on it. Now it went from a car to a lawnmower. It went from grease to gas. It went from a plausible story to an improbable story. Meaning, it's October. You're cutting the grass. You run out of gas. You fill it up. It overflows. It's happened to me. It's happened to you. I get it. Not one time did I ever take the shirt off my back in October and clean that lawnmower off because I thought it would catch fire. That's an asinine statement. That's an untruth. Okay? We'll continue. In the latest grand jury, and again, I'm sorry that I don't have that date of when it was. It would make a lot of sense if I did, but for some reason I didn't write it down. He was outside, Henry Boy, and runs into his employer there. And his employer asked him, he said he was acting very nervous. Hey, I get that. Just because anybody could act nervous, they have to testify in a grand jury. Doesn't mean that you're guilty of anything. But when he asked him what, he was doing here, he says, quote unquote, he got mixed up with the wrong people at the wrong time. That's coming from Henry's mouth. Okay? Henry testified before the grand jury on 2 occasions. Remember, 1989 and then later at the date that I don't remember. I should be ashamed of myself for not being able to think of that date. And I am ashamed of myself. But I can't remember. But it was after 1989. During his second appearance, he was confronted with prior testimony that he was not sure when he stayed overnight at Debbie's and that it could have been a week prior to Corey's disappearance. He still maintained that he was not sure whether he stayed overnight on October 11th. He was confronted with his prior testimony that he could not recall if he returned to Debbie's residence in the hours leading up to Corey's disappearance. He then admitted that he did go back, but could not remember why he did so. He stated that he could not recall if he washed and waxed the car, but acknowledged that she would have no reason to make that up if she said that, which she did. In his first appearance, Henry testified that he cut Debbie's grass a few times and that he was wearing a yellow shirt that he put in the burn barrel. When asked if this was still his testimony, that he put the shirt in the burn barrel, he stated that I can remember, yes. He was then asked whether he went home without wearing a shirt in October, and he replied, yeah. So, what I want to get into the burn barrel more, okay? Because there's a lot more there that I want to talk about that can be very disturbing. But I want to go through a couple of things that I circled, and that was him distancing himself. He responded apparently when asked if he lied about spending the night at Debbie's residence. Okay, so there, we're done with going over that. Let me get to the burn barrel incident. It's fairly obvious to me that Henry Boy is involved in this. The police know that, and that's why they charged him, okay, for the obstruction. The question becomes, why is he involved? How do we know he's involved, okay? I'm confident in saying I know that he's involved because of A, the burn barrel incident, the made-up story, the changing of the story about his shirt. B, because Alberta and Debbie do not place him there, when in his own words, he was there. C, he himself distancing himself from that residence and from Debbie, saying, oh, I don't really know her. But he had spent the night there, he had 10 birthday parties there, washed and waxed her car, cut her grass, according to him. So he knows her. And it's my opinion, based off all this, is that he was smitten over her. That's going to get us into what took place. Now, much like Jolene Witt, John Benet Ramsey, we have to determine, is this an outside intruder coming into this home and taking this kid? Or is it somebody from inside that house? You have to deduce some things. John Benet, you know, for me, there was a lot of different things that made me say it was somebody inside that house. I can't tell you who, but it wasn't an intruder that came in. The ransom note, the pen being placed back into the holder, things like that. In this case, in Jolene Witt case, it was more difficult because of the 3 doors being open, the child in the second bedroom, being older. That was a little bit more difficult, but I think I was able to determine that was an outside intruder. May have had some help from the inside. I'm not sure about that, but it was definitely somebody from the outside, and I know who they were. In this case, it is so much easier. It really is. Nobody should even think that it was an intruder. Why? Because you have an adult who was awake, and you have a 2-year-old child that is not going to come down the steps and just wander out. The people that want to think that and say, yes, that's a possibility, they are the same people that go on conspiracy hunts. Is it possible? Yes. It's possible that a unicorn is out in my backyard right now, but it's not probable. And that's what you have to do in order to solve cases. Alberta was awake. An intruder is not, now I'm not saying Alberta's involved. Don't make that mistake. I'm just saying that nobody came into that house while she's awake in the living room watching TV and took that kid when there's 4 other kids. But yet they go to the mom's room where Corey was on her bed and not any of the other children. Doesn't make any sense. An intruder is not coming into that house and doing it. Yes, I understand intruders have done that. I think of Elizabeth Smart. And she was kidnapped, found alive. You know, a great story ended, a bad story that ended up with a happy ending. But you can rule out an intruder here. The time gap, 12 to 12:30, that would mean the suspect would have to be watching the house and wait for her to leave and then not care that somebody else is in the house and go in. It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, you got to rule it out. There was no intruder. So we've deduced that it's somebody from inside that house. Okay? So you're looking at Alberta, you're looking at Debbie. They're the 2 adults in the house. Yes, Henry Boy comes into play, but he doesn't come into play as an intruder that comes in and takes Corey. Why? What would the purpose be? Sexual gratification? Yeah, that's what it would be, but that's not what happened here. So you have to really look at Debbie and Alberta and their background. Now, a red flag for me was when I started looking at Debbie a little bit, was that I found out that her ex-husband, who just that year was arrested and convicted for rape and sexual assault of Debbie's sister, who was 14 years old at the time. Now, what does that tell me? As an investigator, it tells me that the home life there, the judgment, the decision making on Debbie is probably not the best. Now, the people that would know that would be her co-workers, people from her high school. Hey, I always say, you want to know the truth about somebody, you go back and talk to their high school teachers and their high school friends. They would tell you she doesn't make the best decision. She was dirty. She was poor. She's a drug user. Whatever it is, that's where you learn it. And I would like to know more about Debbie, but from what I gathered, from what I saw, it seems like she didn't make the best decisions in life. And that home life may have not been conducive for children. I would want to know if children and youth were involved at any point in time. Certain things that I know the police looked at. Okay, I'm not telling them anything that they don't know. But that bothered me about him sexually assaulting and getting convicted for doing that to Debbie's sister. Let's go back to the burn barrel. It's the biggest red flag there is. Something occurred with that child inside that house. Whether it's an accident, whether it's intentional homicide, but the child wasn't trafficked. They didn't sell the child off. The hard reality is this child is not alive. Now, how do I know that? How can I say that with confidence? Why would you be burning something? First of all, I'm stuck on this, and I thought about this a lot for the last couple of days. This is 1986. You don't have touch DNA. You don't even have DNA. right? Why would you burn the child's clothing? Why? Let's ponder on that. What could be the possible reasons? Forget about the cuts in the legs of the pajama tops and the scotch tape, which is all very weird, but let's simplify it. If there was an accident in the home, and let's say, just say the child fell down the steps and the child broke his neck. And you decided, we got to get rid of this body. I'm going to look like a neglectful parent, whatever it is. Why do you burn the clothing? You wouldn't, right? But now let's think about what happens if let's just say, the mom stabs the child. What's the difference there? Blood. So go back to the burn barrel and think to yourself, why would you burn the child's clothing? There's only two reasons for the child's clothing to be burned. One, they had nothing to do with this case. That is a possibility. Or B, there is fluids and more than likely blood and not semen. Because remember, if this was a sexually motivated crime and there was semen on the clothing, DNA is not around yet. They wouldn't know that. So there would be no reason to burn the clothing, right? Let's say the clothing's taken off the child and is laying in the bed and police come and they see the clothing. They're not going to think twice. If there's semen on it, you can't see it unless you have a black light. But if there's blood, that would be the reason you burn the clothing. Now, I'm not saying it was from stab wounds. I don't know, but I'm just saying blood. Now let's move to Henry Boy's shirt. Why are you burning that? He himself said he put it in the burn barrel. He burned it. One because of grease, the other because of gas, one because of a car, one because of a lawnmower. It's a bullcrap story, okay? Why? Why does he burn it? Now, there's only two reasons for this one. And one isn't because it's not involved in the case. We've deduced that it is. So the two reasons are, one, he was seen wearing that shirt wherever he went and he decided, I have to get rid of it, which I don't believe. Or B, because what? It has blood on it. Something visible that you have to get rid of. That's the only reason to get rid of it. It's the only reason to burn it. Now that is why the burn barrel is so disturbing to me. Because something bloody had to have taken place. Now, what do I think happened? I don't know. I'm deducing possibilities to probabilities, and that's what I see. I tend to believe, and again, this is my opinion just based off of evidence that I see, is that somebody inside that house is responsible. Meaning, more than likely, mom. And mom, I'm betting, dollars to donuts. And if I would love to know this, but I'm guessing I'm right, is that she's a manipulative type of person. She's a manipulator. And I bet you Henry followed her around like a little lost puppy. And my guess is Henry, again, remember I said I'd get to this, was smitten. And he would do whatever Debbie told him to do. And if that included help me dispose of the remains of my son, I believe that he would have probably done that. I would need to look more into Henry Boyd's background, but based off of his testimony, him distancing himself from her, and him saying about the medical alarm of his grandmother, putting him in that area and then lying, saying he was there, he wasn't there. And then Debbie saying he wasn't there that day, and Alberta saying that. I can't let her off the hook either. It's the only reason to burn the shirt. It's the only reason. There had to have been evidence, bodily fluid from Corey on that shirt. I mean, it's the only reason to burn it. Now, I tend to also believe the child was killed inside that house previous to 12 o'clock, before she went to get pizza. That's my belief. And there's only 3 people that know. Now, I did read that there was some ransom note or ransom calls placed. And they traced one of these calls, and it came back to Debbie's grandparents. And their excuse was, hey, we have an outside phone, so anybody could have done it. That's a red flag to me as well. I don't know if, again, it goes back to her background, how she was raised, her decision making, what's the thought process there. Some families are just not any good. You know, that's just the way it is. Again, I'm not saying this with 1,000% confidence because I haven't read the police reports. But from this grand jury testimony, from the concerned citizen that gave me information, timeline, pictures, photographs of that inside of that house, to me, it just seems like a bloody event took place in that house. And I can't surmise why. You know, somebody falling down the steps, these steps, are they going to get real bloody? And if they did, why would you just not call police and say an accident occurred? You don't have to cover up an accident. You have to cover up murder. To me, I feel that that is Henry's involvement, is the cover-up part. You know, it's possible that she went and met Henry with the child's body. But see, the problem I have with that is most times I don't like to believe that offenders like to involve others in their dastardly deed. Meaning, let's say if I murdered somebody, and this might be a poor example, but I'm going to use it. If I murdered somebody, I would not call anybody for help. Why? The less people that know, the better off you are, right? Again, diving into Debbie's background would bring this out. Why does she involve Henry? That's the big question. That's the question that I have. Maybe it's because she knew he's going to do whatever I tell him to do. That's the only reason, unless he was involved somehow, besides the cover-up. But I don't understand how it turns into a bloody event. I mean, that's very harsh. Okay? I don't know. I don't know. But I can say, I feel with good confidence, that's the only reason you burn the clothing. Okay? And yes, that clothing being burnt is directly related to this incident. Okay? It's not a coincidence. I'm just going to go out and just burn garbage. No, this is specific things that you burned in there. Now, I didn't see the reason why anybody in the grand jury indictment talked about the child's clothing and why that was being burned. And if it in fact was Corey's clothing, I didn't see that in there. But if that clothing's getting burned with Henry's shirt, and I feel confident that Henry's shirt is involved, meaning there's a reason to burn that. And it's not grease, it's not gas, it's got to be blood. And why do you burn it there? If it was on October 14th, like we believe in the grand jury indictment says, if it is involved, and it has to be because of the reasons we said, why would you burn it there when the child's missing already? People are having eyes on the house. Police are there searching. And then you're going to burn it there instead of going somewhere else and throwing it away, burning it? I would have to question Henry Boy's IQ. And I don't mean that as a joke. Also, Debbie. I'd like to know their intelligence level. Now, also in the indictment was that the police jumped on the fact that Henry said he heard that Corey's body was thrown away in a dumpster in Allentown. Is it Allentown? Allenwood? Allenwood, I should know that, but an area a short distance from their residence. And police put that in the affidavit or the grand jury findings. I don't know if that means anything, to be honest. To me, it's not as important as the police, at least there, made it out to seem. That's just my opinion on it. That's it. That's it. Maybe I'll revisit this if more information becomes available. It's an intriguing case, but it's an easy case to me to say, hey, it's not an outsider. Nobody came in that house. Somebody inside that house. And this I'm less confident on, but it appears that it's true, is that it was a bloody event. Now, it doesn't mean somebody was knifed up, even though police should be able to tell if those cuts in that pajamas and the legs were done by a knife. There would be blood stains on that. I didn't see that That would be jumping to a lot of conclusions, right? Some sort of bloody event. I can't say anything more than that. Here's my notes. And it is Allenwood. Ironically, that's where one of Jolene Witt's abductors lives. No, don't try to make a correlation there when there isn't one. Torn child shorts, pajama bottoms with cuts in legs. In Henry's jersey. Red flags. The lies, distancing himself from Debbie, 40 minutes to call police, husband in jail for the rape of a 14-year-old sister, Debbie's sister, the ransom calls. No intruder. All passed the polygraph, at least Soanes that did, that I saw. It doesn't matter, I don't believe. And polygraphs, you guys know that. So, hey, that's my look into the Corey Edkins disappearance. That river being right there, that's not saying that's where Corey was ended up, but inside a home, you have to look at, I'd like to know what type of basement it was. If it was a dirt basement, I would be looking in there. I would be forensically looking in that house for blood. Somewhere in that house. Because I believe it's a bloody event. Again, that's why you burn the clothes. The jersey, anyhow. It's the only reason. So, that's what I would be doing. I'd be taking a black light. I'd be taking luminol, spraying it all in there. I'd be finding blood somewhere because it's in there. That's my thoughts on the Corey Edkin case. I would hope that his body would be recovered. That river, basement, burn barrel. I know they checked that burn barrel, but those are just my thoughts on this very, very sad case. So hopefully this helps somebody. And again, I'm not pointing fingers and saying I know with confidence 100% that these people are guilty. Just saying, from the evidence provided, I'm able to deduce somebody inside that house and it was a bloody event. Okay? That's all I can say on this case on Corey Edkins. Thanks for watching, tuning in, and prayers, heartfelt prayers go out to Corey Edkins and some of his family members in the community and law enforcement that have investigated this for all these years. My thoughts and prayers are with each and every one of you. Thanks for watching. Mains out.